So we first assessed the problems. Like, remember, she was coming from bankruptcy. So we had to figure out where she was in the bankruptcy, figure out kind of what her goals were. And like I said, it was kind of like a throwaway statement. Like, I want to retire at 65. And then it was like, and then it kind of followed up. It's like, I just can't envision myself working more than 10 years. So that was the first thing we assessed. And then we kind of set like a goal. So, okay, my goal is to retire at 65. And I was like, and I looked at her Social Security statement. I was like, player, 65 is not going to happen. Can you give me one more year? And she said, okay, I can give you one more year. And she did. So that was the goal, to retire at 66. So we put all of our focus on retiring her at 66. So basically it's working the plan.
You're listening to Nurses on Fire, the podcast for nurses by nurses aspiring to financial independence. I'm your host, Naseema McElroy of Financially Intentional. Let's spark some flames, y'all. Welcome to episode 16 of the Nurses on Fire podcast. And if this is your first time listening, thank you so much for tuning in. I would be eternally grateful if you took a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share with other nurses that you know could benefit. When you post that review, please send a screenshot to Naseema at financiallyintentional.com. So if you like the guest and the topics covered, the best way to support me is by helping me spread the word. Please make sure you're following the podcast Instagram page at Nurses on Fire Podcast. Join the Nurses on Fire Facebook group and make sure you're on the Nurses on Fire mailing list by going over to financiallyintentional.com/NOF list. So you guys, we all experience setbacks in life. Having a divorce, bankruptcy, and layoff happen in a relatively short amount of time is enough to take anyone out. But this nurse right here had a secret weapon up her sleeve. With the help of her daughter, Courtney, this nurse was able to recover from these major financial setbacks, but was also able to be in a position to retire over the course of 11 years. Courtney helped her mother recover and live her best life in retirement. House paid off and all. So who is Courtney? So Courtney Richardson is the founder of the Ivy Investor, the resource for women seeking to navigate the maze of the investment world. Courtney is an attorney and former stockbroker and investment advisor with over 15 years of experience in the financial services industry. She lends her legal and financial expertise to the Huffington Post, AOL, MyFabFinance, Forbes, and other online publications. Courtney was named one of the 7 Black millennial financial experts to follow on Instagram in 2019 by Black Enterprise. Courtney holds a BA in philosophy from the University of Pittsburgh. She also holds a JD from West Virginia University College of Law and an LLM in taxation and certification in estate planning from Temple University Beasley Law School. In this episode, we'll learn how Courtney helped her mother go from bankruptcy to paying off her home and retiring with enough money to live comfortably. Without further ado, episode 16. This nurse retired at 66 with the help of her daughter. So today on Nurses on Fire, we have Courtney of the Ivy Investor joining us. What's up, Courtney?
Yeah.
So, all right, Courtney, tell the good people a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive into how you helped your mom retire at 66.
I guess I have to start like when it all started. So I graduated from college. I was a philosophy major and I felt like I was going to go to law school like the whole time. And then as I'm graduating, I was really tired. I had like school fatigue. So I was like, I'll just work for a little bit and then I'll go back to law school. I'll start the process to apply. And so my job prospects were looking a little slim. And then I put my resume on Monster, and I got a hit from American Express Financial Advisors, which is now Ameriprise. So they were like, hey, do you want to be a financial advisor? And I was like, oh, let me look at all my other options. You know what? I have none. So I'm going to be a financial advisor. That's what I'm going to do. So my dad actually had to pay for my financial licenses. My Series 7, I think, was like $500 because they made you pay for it yourself. It was like they had two options. Either you had track number one, where track one was where they would pay you to study. And then you had track two, where they wouldn't pay you to study. You pay for everything out of pocket, but you got a signing bonus if you worked out. So I was like, well, I'm going to do the signing bonus, because the quicker that you got basically what they call fully licensed, which is a Series 7, Series 66, life, accident, and health, the higher your signing bonus was. So I took the Series 7, which is the stockbroker's license, with no stockbroker experience. I was not a finance major. I just kind of made it work. Took that, passed it on the first time, which is awesome because the failure rate is really, really high, especially for people of color. So I took the next exam, which is 66, passed that. But don't you know, I failed my life, accident, and health exam, the easiest exam of them. I failed it. So I had to wait 30 days to take it again. So I basically like missed my first tier for the signing bonus. I was so salty. I was like, ugh. But either way, worked out. Ended up not working out at that job because I was like 21, trying to make 100, what we call dials a day. Who am I calling? Who thinks I'm authoritative in the financial space? Not anyone with sense, and they shouldn't. So what are we going to do? So I ended up working at Walmart for a second. So that's where I got my first stock. I ended up, when it wasn't really Walmart, it was Sam's Club, but I got Walmart stock because Sam's Club is owned by Walmart. And then I ended up working in banking, and then I was able to transition to Merrill Lynch. So I became a 401k specialist, and then I went into high net worth advising and wealth management, became assistant vice president at 26. A couple of years later, the stock market crashed, and then I decided to go to law school. I did oil and gas for a couple of years. Then I got into taxes. I got in my LLM in taxation from Temple. And then from there, I ended up going in to do real estate tax law. So that's pretty much like my story. Oh gosh, I forgot the Ivy Investor. So the Ivy Investor came in 2014. Ended up doing that because I was feeling very stifled as an associate at a really big law firm. And I felt like I wasn't. So I had two things. I needed a creative outlet. But then also I had all of my friends calling me, Courtney, I'm about to leave my job. Courtney, I'm about to have a kid. Courtney, I'm trying to get a mortgage. My credit's messed up. I was getting called about all these financial things. And I was like, player, I cannot be on the phone with you all day if I need to bill at my job. This is not what we can do. But, you know, I said, and then what I noticed on top of that is I spent so much time getting people up to speed on the basics. I was like, no. I was like, let me do this. I'm going to give you the basics in a blog post. You can get up to speed, and then we'll talk about your specific situation. So that worked really well. So that started in 2014. And here we are 5 years later. So I've kind of been doing what Tara Jackson calls a dual entrepreneur. So I've been doing that for 5 years. It's been, you know, a heck of a ride. So, but it's just a great experience so far.
Yeah, I love it. And I love how you're like, listen, I can't be spending all my time trying to help you. Like, that's exactly how I started Financially Intentional. It was like, listen, I want to help you, but I don't like to repeat myself. So I'm going to put this stuff on blogs or whatever medium you need. And we just going to work that out. So there was a point in time, though, your mom came to you, and your mom is a nurse. What kind of nurse is your mom?
Dialysis.
Okay, cool.
So she did acute and she did chronic.
Okay. So your mom came to you and she was like, I want to retire at 65. And what was she working with?
So a couple of things. Like, she really didn't kind of start this whole retirement thing. So she was bankrupt. So I was living in Pittsburgh, which is from Philly. It's like maybe 5 hours, maybe 4.5 hours away, 300 miles. So I was in Pittsburgh, and she was just like having a really rough go of it. So she was in bankruptcy, and we're like, okay, she felt overwhelmed by it. She had a Chapter 13, which is you basically have to repay your creditors to a trustee, and they distribute whatever the case may be. And then you also have to keep up with your regular bills. In her case, it was pretty much her mortgage. But it was just overwhelming for her just as a general thought. And I think at that time, you know, she was also laid off. She was laid off at the time. She was working as a director of a personal care unit that was closed. So that's kind of like the setup. So she didn't even start talking about retirement because we had like an immediate fire to put out, which is basically how is she going to make all her bankruptcy payments and do what she needs to do while, basically be on unemployment. And I think she was suffering from a couple of different things, like, some depression about like her situation.
So let's rewind a little bit. What year did this happen? And what was going on that besides the layoff, like what else financially was going on with her that caused her to go bankrupt?
She filed for bankruptcy in 2002. So actually what started the whole 1999, I think. I want to say I was my first year of college. My parents divorced. And, as a result of the divorce decrees that they basically split the debts 50-50. But granted, funny story, my mom is a saver. My dad's a spender. So all of the credit card debt didn't have anything to do with her. It was all my dad's. But, part of the divorce decree was they split it 50-50. So I think, she was suffering from some kind of frustration and depression about that situation, not necessarily the dissolution of the marriage, because I think they were separated since 94. So it wasn't necessarily the dissolution of the marriage, but it was kind of like all the stuff that comes with it. So she kept the house, and the trade-off was you keep the house, but you got to pay half of these bills. So that was the trade-off. So that was kind of what led her into bankruptcy. And so she basically filed for bankruptcy. So back up, the house was going into foreclosure. So in order to save the house, she filed for bankruptcy.
Okay, that makes total sense. All right. So basically the immediate fire that you guys were trying to put out was her job situation, number one. Right. And two, trying to get her through this bankruptcy because now she had to figure out how she was going to have to pay this stuff back.
Correct. So this is like 3 years into bankruptcy, we start having like major problems. So I think she was laid off maybe March. I think she went out on like disability because it was stressful. She was like, it got to the point she was they kept kind of cutting back the unit. But even still, you still have patients that are there that scare. And it's kind of like the middle point between independent living, where they have a facility, nursing care facility. So like living in a dorm. So it was kind of like they're like semi-independent, but they do need their meds. You do need to make sure that they're eating properly and kind of doing things that they need to do to maintain kind of their status as they are as elderly. So that was kind of overwhelming for her. Like it got to the point where I think a couple of nights, because it was just her, I think she had an LPN and a CNA. I think that's what the team was. So there was a couple of times she actually had to spend the night at the facility. So it was just a lot for her. So she kind of went out on disability, and the next thing she knew, they closed the unit. So I give you kind of, that was what was going on in 2005. And I was like, you know what, me being in Pittsburgh is not really helping, her. So I moved back to Philadelphia. And then I said, okay, well, what is our situation here? How can I help you get back on the right foot? So that's kind of the background of 2005. That's what started everything.
And where did this idea of making sure that she retired at originally 65 come from?
So she kind of like, at first it was like, how am I going to ever retire? And then I don't even know what shifted for her. Like, I actually probably should ask her, like, what shifted for you? Because I don't know. She just kind of got like, she gets really stubborn. She's like, I'm going to do X. And you're like, sometimes you're like, you have no business doing X. As a parent, you're like, as a daughter, you're like, I don't know if you should do that. But she said, I'm going to retire at 65. I need to retire at 65. And she's 55 at this point. So to give you perspective, she was 10 years out from 65. So I think she basically said to herself, I can only see myself working another 10 years. I think that's what she said in her head.
And I think that's pretty funny, pretty ironic, I should say, because like the whole idea behind FIRE, right? Starting kind of from where you're at, and she was basically starting from zero with this bankruptcy to retiring in 10 years. So can you walk me through how you guys were able to achieve that?
So the first thing I think I kind of alluded to is that we had to assess where she was. Like we had to figure out like what exactly was going on. So I really do remember these numbers. So it was $860 that she paid to the bankruptcy trustee. She paid $1,200 to the mortgage company. So basically right off top, $2,000 was going out of the household before anything else was done. So I had to figure out, okay, so we at least know that $2,000 is has to be taken care of. But also she had a very small 401k at her employer. So apparently she wasn't contributing, but her employer was contributing on her behalf. So she had a very small, it was like about $10,000. But there's a rule that if you're 55 and no longer working at that employer, you don't get hit with the penalty.
Wow, that's the gem. I never heard that.
So because I was working at 401k service, I knew that rule. So I said, okay, well, I was like, at least we know that we can use that money. So I used that money to basically kind of tide her over and basically give her some breathing room with the bankruptcy in the house. So we were able to kind of deal with that. Now, she did have money coming in from unemployment, but it wasn't her full salary. So between all of those things, it was a godsend that we were able to make that work. So we did. She was able to, so when I was growing up, she worked in dialysis, so she was able to transition back to dialysis. So from what I remember, I think she was in geriatric care for maybe about 15 to 20 years. And then she was able to go back into dialysis, was what I knew my mom to be, because back in the day, they used to have beepers. I remember as a child saying, "Mommy, the beeper's going off." So she was on call. So that's how they let you know. They didn't have a cell phone back in the day. You really got beeped. You got paged. So I share that with you. She went into the nursing home kind of realm because her big thing was that she wanted a little bit more regular schedule. So you could do so she was a 7 to 3 nurse. So that worked out really, really well for her as I was growing up. So 7 to 3. Now, of course, it's not 7 to 3. You know that. But, she did the best that she could. So that being said, is that when she went into dialysis, it was kind of like, all right, I'm going to have to hustle this out. So she did. So 2005 was like the turning point year.
How long was she unemployed?
I want to say I think it may be like April to October. I know she started in October. Started her new job in October. So maybe about 6 months. So we made that $10,000 work for about 6 months. But mind you, 2,000 of it was going straight to the bankruptcy trustee. So we were able to basically kind of fill in the gaps with what she had in her 401k. She really didn't have any savings, but we were also able to use her unemployment to kind of also help along. And that's what we did to make it work until she was actually getting a full paycheck again.
Okay, so then the next step after you got her through that tough period.
So like I said, we assessed where she was. I was like, all right, I at least know what you have to come out. And then I said, well, and then when she kind of said, like, as a joke, like, okay, I really want to, I don't even say it was a joke, it was out of desperation. She's like, I cannot work for anything more than 10 years. I just don't envision this happening. So I said, okay, well, what can we do to get you there? And it wasn't really, I can't say that it was like the best engineer plan, because I was kind of like, all right, mind you, I've only been a financial advisor at this time for like 2 years. And I never really had that many clients. And no one ever came to me with like their life falling apart. It was kind of like, hey, I want to, roll over my IRA, or hey, I need you to tell me what kind of life insurance I need. Not like, hey, my life is falling apart, I need you to fix this. So like my mom was like my test, I don't want to say test on me, that's not fair. But like she was like my test subject. Like I was like, all right, we're gonna make this work. So once I was able to get her working again, I said, all right, well, how much you're getting from Social Security? So that was her like direct amount that she knew she was getting every month. And then I said, okay, well, what do we need to do to kind of fill in this gap? But in the interim, our big bear was to take care of the bankruptcy. We had to get her debt free first. Because again, but I also said, once she got more money coming in, I was able to pay the bankruptcy on a regular basis, and anything extra I was starting to put in her 401k. So her bankruptcy was paid off. She actually paid her bankruptcy off 4 years early, which was in 2006. So Chapter 13 bankruptcies are usually about 5 years or more. So she paid hers off in 4. So once we did that, we said, okay, our next big kind of nut is the house. So as we were kind of dealing with the house now she's contributing to her 401k and she's paying down the house. She ended up paying the house off 7 years early because we really made the house a priority, but we also made a priority of her retirement. Now, my mom's a gem in this way because she's not a spender. So it was like I said, in my parents' relationship, my dad was the spender, my mom was a saver. So life got very easy because she's not a person that I had to help manage her spending. That was already taken care of. She was very self-regulated there, but she didn't invest. She didn't know how to invest. But she understood that she's like, well, I'm just going to give it to you. So once we started working her through the plan, so we made the house the priority. And then as I would say, we were dealing with the house, we were putting a certain amount away. I think we were at least putting away the match. I'm not really sure on the percentages until after 2012. So we had about 6 years that we were able to kind of really start putting money away for for her retirement while we were still dealing with the house. Because a lot of people feel like, oh, I can't walk and chew gum. I can't save and invest. I can't pay off debt and invest. And I'm like, no, you have to. Time is not on your side. You're going to have to do both. So you make your investment payments like a bill, like make your investments bills. Like that's something you have to pay. And that's exactly how we did it. So of course it's easy because it's your 401k and it's coming directly out of your account. But then also, nurses make good money. She was also doing overtime as a dialysis nurse. So she was doing really well. But one of the major things about her 401k is that we also had to manage for her tax liability. And the 401k, it coming out pre-tax, helped in that way. So we were getting a twofer. So we were, in the current time, we were dealing with her tax situation. We were reducing her tax burden. But then on top of that, we were also saving for the future. And then she was getting her company match on top of that.
So did you guys have a number in mind when you were thinking about her retiring at 66?
No, girl. Looking back, we just kind of of course, I didn't know anything. So I knew stuff, but I didn't know we should have a goal number. I should know what her expenses are. I should know kind of what this looks like, what we expect to have as a shortfall and kind of work on the shortfall. I had no idea. It kind of ended up working out very well. Now that I kind of do this work and I talk about this on a regular basis, now I'm like, okay, so she was somewhere between her expense number and kind of like her income times 10 or whatever the calculation is. Like when we actually rolled it out, she was like right in the middle of that. Basically what we were able to do in her savings 401k. So that was her shortfall. So she had a decent Social Security coming in, but then she also had the 401k, but I didn't calculate a number. We were just like, put as much away as we can, and we'll just kind of figure it out as it works out. And it ended up working out. But we also had a great market, remember from 2009. So I was putting money in as the market was falling because I was doing, people call it, it's technically called dollar cost averaging. We were putting in the same amount, if not more, because as we were able, like I said, in 2012, we ended up trying to max out her account because that's what our goal was, to get her as close to retirement as we could, is to max out the 401k.
So the ultimate date that she retired was in 2012.
No, so she retired in 2016. So
I
she
got you.
retired when she turned 66. So we had 4 years of actually maxing out the account. So 2013, I kind of messed up a little bit. So when you have your 401k, your employer is only going to contribute as you match. Like they may have a profit sharing or something else. So I didn't actually, so I got her to max out in 13. And I don't even remember what 13 was. It might have been like 13, 14, 15,000. So I was able to get her to max out there. But we maxed out, I think it's November. And then so basically we lost the month of match. So I said, I got to do this again. Now, mind you, and on top of that, she's entitled to a catch-up provision. So the catch-up provision, because she's over the age of 50, she was entitled to contribute even more over what we call the max for the 401k. So we were able to do that. But I wasn't actually working it properly in 13. Like I told you, she was my test subject. So I was like, oh, okay, I messed that up. So let's do it again in 14. So in 14, we were able to get her catch-up in, her catch-up provision, and her full max out in her 401k. And we did that for 14, 15, and part of 16, as much as we could in 16.
So I just want to go back and highlight two very important points that you made. Number one, when you are contributing to your retirement account, once you stop contributing, you lose the match. So if you max out your retirement account early, you're missing out on months of matching because they're only going to match you up to whatever that max was every month. So I know a lot of people are like, I want to get the benefits up front of investing. So they want to max out as early as possible. Well, that's okay. As long as you at least contribute, like just the rest of the year, make those minimum payments to make sure that you just get that match. So those unicorns that are out there that love to do that, because we're still trying to get people to invest 10%. But for those people who are thinking about front loading their retirement savings, you will miss out on a match if you're not contributing throughout the year. And then also there's hope for people who are a little bit older because your contributions are increased because you do have a catch-up period. And that goes up as the contribution limits go up every year.
Right. So I think so now they were speaking in 2019, 401k, 403b, 457, TSP. I feel like the alphabet soup of retirement plans is $19,000 for maxing out if you're under 50. And then you have the additional $6,000, which is up from $5,500. That's if you're over the age of 50. So you can really put a decent amount away. So you're basically putting away, so I think it's what, 25,000 that you can get away. So that works out really well for people who are like, oh, I still have a lot to do. I have a lot of catch up. So also, but amazing thing also with a lot of nurses, depending on what retirement plan that you have, if you have a 403B, some 403Bs allow for another type of catch-up provision, which is like a 15-year, like you've been working for the same employer for 15 years. They allow you to, I believe, contribute an additional $15,000, which is over 5 years. So it's additional $3,000 per year. And you don't have to be the age of 50. You just have to hit 15 years with the same employer. So if you were working with the same hospital system, that counts, but it also depends if your 403B allows it. It is allowable under the tax code, but it may not be a feature of your particular plan.
So that's $15,000 total.
Right. So additional. So you're able to contribute, your $19,000 if you're under the age of 50, but now you can contribute another $3,000 if you've worked for this company or this, system for, 15 years. So even if you're not over the age of 50, there's additional money that you can put in.
I understand this because this is more game that I did not know about. So you can contribute an extra $3,000 every year if you've been with your company for a long time period, up to $15,000, right?
Correct. So Correct. That's completely correct. But it's only in 403B. So it's not a feature of 401k. It's not a feature of TSPs. And I'm pretty sure the 457s, which are municipal plans, they have a couple of carve outs also. So I also tell people, if you have kind of these 403Bs or 457s, reach out to your benefits person and make them explain to you all the features of your plan, but then also read it for yourself too. Because there's some things that are kind of like you were talking about game. There's some game actually in your plan document that you're going to have to read. And I know it's not a lot of fun. It's about reading those documents. About as interesting as watching paint dry. But I tell you, some of them nuggets in those plans, you're going to say, you know what? I'm going to watch this paint dry because it's that much of a game changer.
Well, girl, I need some of that game because I have a 403B and a 457. So I know I'm very fortunate in that sense. And so I am going to look through that plan. And you know what's funny is that I used to think that it was like watching paint dry. And I tell you, like, every time I used to look in those books, it automatically turned into Arabic to me. Like, I could not read it. But like the other day, I got my perspectives from my 403B. I was like, it's a miracle. Like, I can read this now. Like, I understand all the companies. I understand what it's saying. And so it wasn't the perspective for the 457. It wasn't that book for the 457, but I have that and I'm going to look through it. And yeah, I'm going to look for those little gems, but I'm also going to reach out to my plan administrator because he's well versed, but I need to know my stuff too. So I think that that's very important I'm still trying to get people to just go talk to the man so they can set their stuff up. So, I feel like I have to be the person that's going to be like, listen, and then on this page, this is where you're going to find this information. I'm known as a debt slayer because of the $200,000 in student loans I slayed in 2.5 years. I hated those loans and dealing with the loan servicers. I was head down and focused and wanted to get rid of the debt as soon as possible. Knocking out these loans and seeing a zero loan balance was one of the most liberating feelings I have ever felt. But recently I learned that by not optimizing my student loan payoff strategy, I lost money. I'm talking about big money, y'all. I could have saved $80,000 if I had a customized student loan plan by the team at Student Loan Planner. Please don't make the same mistake as me. If you have student loan debt, especially in the six figures, head over to studentloanplanner.com/financially intentional to get your customized student loan plan today. Do you know how your retirement funds are invested? Do you know how much you're paying in fees? Chances are you're on the same boat as some of my coworkers. Some of them set up their retirement when they first got hired and never looked at it again. Some have let a computer select their investments and don't even know what they're invested in. Worst of all, some people have their retirement funds sitting in a savings account And they're not even invested in the market because they're afraid to lose money. That's hella scary, y'all. What's even scarier is that some of you listening don't even have a clue what I'm talking about. And guess what? This is super common. This has to change today. Let Bloom do the work for you. Head over to financiallyintentional.com/Bloom and get your free retirement account analysis. They'll check and see if your retirement account is optimized for you, and they'll let you know if you're paying too much in fees. That's Bloom with 3 O's. Bloom can also manage your retirement account on an ongoing basis so you can take the stress out of retirement planning. If you choose to work with Bloom, their fees are incredibly low, less than your Netflix subscription. You have enough to worry about. Let Bloom handle your retirement account. The hardest thing you'll have to do when it comes to your retirement is remember that Bloom is spelled with 3 O's. Head over to financiallyintentional.com/Bloom. Remember, spelled with 3 O's, and get your retirement account squared away today. Can you talk about some things, Courtney, that you found that are some little hidden gems in these plans?
So some plans will allow you what's called a self-directed brokerage account, allows you to invest in this beyond what your menu of funds. So they allow you to invest in certain stocks, certain ETFs. It just depends on what your particular plan offers, but it basically allows you, I wouldn't say kind of completely unfettered access to the stock market, but you get a lot of different benefits available to you that you can invest in additionally. And what I do like with a lot of those plans is that you may find an ETF that gives you the same kind of result that you're looking for with a mutual fund. So for example, let me back up. So if you have an S&P 500 mutual fund and then you have an S&P 500 ETF, ETFs tend to be cheaper. That's like the rule, I guess, kind of like that's usually like the example, but sometimes there's some kind of outliers where the mutual fund may be cheaper because you have a bigger plan. So it just depends. This is why you got to go read the documents and see what's going on. But in the event that your mutual fund is at your S&P mutual fund is more expensive and you have the option of a self-directed brokerage account, then you can say, okay, well, I really want to be an S&P 500 fund. I'm going to go for the ETF where the fees are going to be lower and therefore more of my money is actually going into the investment. So that's kind of a gem that I love about the plans. And this is something else that I like to share with people, but I caution them about it, is a lot of the plans do have loan options. I don't love the loans. I just don't. But again, I think you should know what your options are. I had a couple of people that are saying, Courtney, here's my really big problem. I'm trying to get myself in a better situation financially, but I really can't afford, like I have really, really high interest rate credit debt. So they'll say like, I have a Macy's card or I have a, some kind of really expensive card that has like a 20-24% rate. So they'll say, Court, can I take a 401k loan or can I take a loan out of my retirement? I'm like, oh, I don't want you to, because what ends up happening when you're taking the loan is that the rules are with a loan is that they take it out of your pre-tax, what we call source. So your pre-tax money is where it comes from first. Now you're paying it back, but remember, you're paying it back into the pre-tax source. So when it comes out in retirement, you're going to get, let me clarify, you're paying it back after tax. So when it comes out in retirement, you're going to get taxed again, double taxed. And you're like, So again, like we have to look at the long term, but there's a couple of situations where I've seen where if you're paying your average credit card debt is 15% or maybe 18%, but you can get a lower rate with your 401k. That's an option. It's really a really bad option. It's like at the bottom of my totem poles. It is a last resort, but it is something because again, what I have noticed is that getting a loan and basically doing consolidation of your credit cards and you're basically saving about $400 a month. Because I've had a couple of people where that's really what the difference was. And I'm like, okay, maybe that is a better option because one, you're able to improve your credit. Oh, you're paying yourself back. Not really, but you're able to consolidate and you are paying yourself back with some interest. It's usually prime plus whatever it is, which at this point is not much, but at least gives you a little bit more leeway that you can put more money towards your goals. So it's kind of like 6 one hand, half dozen the other. I need people to run through the numbers, but it is an option.
Right.
I do like to share that. But with the 457 and the 403B, I'm pretty sure you can actually contribute to both.
Yep.
So, and that's awesome. And that definitely changes the game for you as a person, because you're like, okay, now I was putting away 19 and now I can double how much I'm putting away.
Now it's 38 off top. Off top. Yeah.
So, and like I said, the 403B has a set of options. And then I was telling you, I was like, okay, I remember 403B. So they have a catch up. 457Bs have a catch up deferral also. So they have a special, it's called a last 3-year catch up, which allows you to defer in the last 3 years before you reach your plan's normal retirement age to contribute more money. There's some kind of little wiggle rooms that you have in some of these other plans that, to me, are pretty much I don't want to say they're disfavored, but they don't get as much love in the public space. There's like 401k, and it's like, no, not everybody has a 401k, and not all of these accounts actually act like a 401k. So understanding that if you have an account that's not a 401k, understanding that you really need to do some research to see what you have and what benefits you have, because again, thinking that you have something that you don't will kind of hurt you in the long run, and actually hurt how much you can contribute or how much you think you can contribute.
Yep. And I want to touch back on one point that you made that was super duper important, is that most of the times we don't understand that within our retirement plans, we probably have a list of like 10 to 20 options that we're investing in, and they're not the best options. And like you said, if we have an option to invest basically almost in the open market, and we can get lower fees or in the form of expense ratios, if you're looking at it like that, we can make our money work better for us with the same kind of performance that these things are offering. Like by law, every 401k administrator has to have like an index fund, but it might not be the best expense ratio on there. And you could, like you said, ETFs are typically cheaper because they have less of a management component to it. And so if you can find an ETF on the open market, then you're saving so much money. So I think that that's a gem. And I didn't even know that. I'm learning so much, Courtney. Thank you so much. And then also just knowing those little intricacies that are specific for your plans. First of all, a lot of people that I work with don't even know that they have access to both the 403B and the 457, that they can be maximizing a $38,000 a year. And in California, we get taxed out the yin yang. Like most nurses are in some kind of tax debt because we get paid a lot in comparison, but we also get paid a lot of taxes if we don't manage our income properly. So I just tell them, look, honey, either you're going to pay yourself or you're going to pay the IRS. 10 times out of 10, I'm going to pay myself, so, but we have to know what's out there and available. And that's what this podcast is for, making sure that you know your options. And there's a different path for everyone. And that's why I'm sharing all these different stories. So yeah, Courtney was able to successfully retire her mom in 2016 at the age of 66. And again, just briefly walk through the steps of what you did.
So we first assessed the problems. Like, remember, she was coming from bankruptcy. So we had to figure out where she was in the bankruptcy, figure out kind of what her goals were. And like I said, it was kind of like a throwaway statement. Like, I want to retire at 65. And then it was like, and then it kind of followed up. It's like, I just can't envision myself working more than 10 years. So that was the first thing we assessed. And then we kind of set like a goal. So, okay, my goal is to retire at 65. And I was like, and I looked at her Social Security statement. I was like, player, 65 is not going to happen. Can you give me one more year? And she said, okay, I can give you one more year. And she did. So that was the goal, to retire at 66. So we put all of our focus on retiring her at 66. So basically it's working the plan. So her whole point was, one, we had to get rid of the bankruptcy. Then we had to get her debt free. And then from there, we had to max out her retirement as much as we could. And she was able to do that because she had a nurse's salary. And, basically that was a great thing. And she had no other debt. Like, my mom went to community college. She has an associate's in nursing. So she didn't need a BSN. Mm-hmm. And by the time she was pretty much grandfathered, but that was also her push out in 2016. She was like, oh, they're asking for a BSN. I'm not doing this. And so again, this is where she was. So she had no student loan debt. So we were just really focused on working the plan, but also we were checking in. So where are we? How close are we? Oh, but to your point, I do want to add to the self-directed brokerage account. When you roll over your account and you have a self-directed brokerage account, you usually have to cash out of your positions. They will over in kind. So that's what happened to my mom. So she did have a self-directed brokerage account, that I managed, that was doing really, really well. And I ended up having to get her out of that. So I basically had to cash out of her position. Girl, I had to cash out of Apple, and I got Apple at $90 a share.
What?
So mad. I was just like, so again, but if you have what we call like another type of account, can roll over in kind. But with these particular self-directed accounts, they don't allow you. So basically you have to move it into your cash account, which basically puts you back into the 401k. And then from there you roll over. So yeah, I'm really super salty. Like I still haven't gotten over it because I got into Apple and it was like $94 a share, but I got into Apple around Brexit. Mm-hmm. So everything went down when Britain was trying to leave. Well, they're still trying to leave the European Union because everybody was very uncertain about what that actually meant. But I was like, oh, everything's on sale. Let's go. Because when I look at stocks, I'm always saying, all right, well, what am I willing to pay for you? It's kind of like if I'm looking at the store, if I'm at Macy's, I'm like, okay, there's a leather jacket. Oh, that's full price at $300. I'm not paying $300, but I will pay in my head. I'm like, all right, I pay like $215 to $210, maybe $200 if I'm lucky. So you already have in your mind what you're willing to pay. So in Apple, I think before Brexit happened, it was over $100 a share. I was like, I'm not paying that. But once it hit under $100 a share, I was like, I'm on it. Same thing with Amazon. I got on Amazon at $900 a share.
Wow.
So again,
what is it, like 25? How much is it now? It's like something ridiculous.
It probably is. I took for all of it because it's just at this point these numbers aren't supported by the market. Like the market is just kind of like pushing everything up.
Right.
So let's see.
Hyperinflated, 1,700. Yeah.
1,700. So I shared that to say, at the time Amazon was going back and forth around $1,000. So it dropped, and I was like August. It was August of some years. I have to look at these statements. But I ended up getting in at like 900 because in my head, I was like, I'm not paying $1,000 for anybody's stock. The only thing I'm paying $1,000 per share would have been for like Berkshire Hathaway. That would have been it. Like, I'm not doing any of that. I don't care. You're not worth that to me. So that being said is that when Amazon dropped down, that's kind of when I put them on, when I actually did the purchase. So they've always been on my radar. But girl, I forgot where So we worked the plan and we reevaluated the plan. Like we always were looking like, okay, how close are we? What are we doing? And it wasn't, again, I didn't have a number. I was just like, all right, we just going to throw everything that we can at this goal and make it work, like make it do what it do. We were consistently evaluating. I was looking at her statements. I was looking, she did have some mutual funds, but she was pretty much invested in the stock market because one, I was an investment advisor. That's what I did. But on top of that, there were just better options and better opportunities that I saw in the market. Now she did have, we did have a international fund that I really liked. And I think that was the only thing that I saw in her actual account that I really liked. So we did that and we just made it work. I mean, we celebrated when it happened. It was kind of very unceremonious. Like it was very unexciting. She was like, oh yeah, tomorrow. She's like, can you write my letter? And I was like, all right. And it was June of 2016. Can you write my letter of resignation? I was like, sure. And then she went per diem for like a month. She's like, I'm done. I don't want to do this. I'm out.
So when she retired at 66 in 2016, she had her house paid off. Mm-hmm. She had her Social Security.
Mm-hmm. Her car was paid off.
So basically, the highest bills, she did not have those. So she just had like those basic utilities, cell phone, cable, those kind of bills, property taxes, those things like that. And she had her Social Security, which Social Security basically covers most of that. And she had her retirement. So what has her drawdown strategy looks like?
So drawdown strategy, the first year, I think it was maybe like a little bit more than I would like. We did about 10% the first year. And that was just kind of getting her like set up and comfortable, if that makes sense. So we did that. But this year, we haven't done any draws this year.
Wow. So she's just riding off of her Social Security.
Yeah.
And her retirement's just sitting there stacking because the market is freaking ridiculous.
Correct. So yeah, we're just hanging out in the market.
So you're not just 100% bonds because she's retired now.
No. So she's 30% in the stock market. So she's like 30, 70. Yeah, 30/70 is the allocation. And the reason being is that I don't want her not to have any market exposure, but I also don't want, we are in a late market cycle, but you have to be very cognizant of kind of what's going on in the market. She's about 30%, kind of the regular Amazon. We didn't get back in Apple. We got into Nike. Nike's done great since we
So
got
you
in.
guys do single stocks on top of like your index funds, your ETF investing?
Yeah, she's not actually in any ETFs now. Like when
no?
When I rolled her over, we just kind of did 30% in individual stocks, and then she's in cash for everything else. It just, well, not cash. I should say cash equivalents. We did a couple of short-term bonds, which weren't bad. Like, so each investment house has like basically what's called a bond inventory. Her account's at Merrill Lynch. So her account's relatively, I think they have a pretty good bond selection. So we did a couple. When the oil industry was doing really well, we did one with Statoil, and it was like a 9-month bond. We need to think about what we have in there now, but no, it's just really kind of like cash equivalents, nothing really crazy. But she does have market exposure.
But those are through single stocks, but you selectively pick those, and those are kind of stocks that she's like bought and held because those are good companies that she got on sale.
Correct. And we also do, like, I'm not a huge focus, like I'm not going to chase a dividend, but it's something that I do consider. And it's not necessarily something that I'm considering. So it's like, oh, we have regular income, but if I ever wanted to turn on the dividend option, basically what we do is we reinvest dividends. So let me back up. So right now we're reinvesting her dividends. So whenever she gets a dividend payment, she's not getting cash in her account, is actually reinvesting in stock. But what that does for her, she doesn't need the funds, as we already talked about. She doesn't need it. Why actually have the money go into a cash account? But at some point she may say, you know what, I want my dividend. So what we'll do is we'll turn the dividend reinvestment off, and then that money will go to her cash account.
And it's just as easy as clicking a button and just saying, you know what, I just wanted to go into my cash account versus being reinvested.
Yep. Easy peasy.
That's perfect. I love it. I love that strategy. I love how set your mom is. And it gives people hope, especially if they're older in life, that it is possible. She started from divorced, bankrupt, with having to spend her for whatever little she had in her 401k just to get through a transition period of being unemployed to being retired in 11 years. So that's bomb. That's awesome. Like, I give you kudos. And the point that I wanted to make is that you weren't like a super sophisticated investor. Like, you basically use this as an opportunity to help you learn and understand the market at the same time. So I think that that's awesome. And it just, again, is an example of just taking a little bit of intentionality, putting a little bit of intentionality into something. You don't have to be a pro, but it's about taking action. Yes, you did have a little bit of fuel under your butt, like you had to get this done for your mom. But at the same time, it's not like you could have been like, I need to research this. I need to, but you took action and it worked out. So kudos to you, Courtney. You're the bomb. Yeah. I hope my daughter is like you. My daughters are like you. And taking care of
thank
me.
You. I mean, you have to take action. And like you said, like I was learning as I went along. Now, when the market crashed, I was basically doing high net worth advising. So a lot of the stuff I was learning there, I was able to at least pivot for her. Like, okay, what can we do here? So like I was doing in that space, mutual funds on steroids. Basically, we call mutual funds on steroids. That's the way we explained it to people. But when a mutual fund, you own the individual share of the mutual fund, but you don't own the individual stock. But if you're a high net worth person, that can cause what we call embedded gains. So your gains they're basically phantom gains, and they're not embedded gains. I forgot what they're called, but they're basically phantom gains. So if there's a distribution earlier in the year and you didn't own the mutual fund, you still get hit for that. But if you have a lot of money in the mutual fund, you can't have that. So what we did for high net worth people is they would have a strategy that was similar to a mutual fund, but they would have XYZ stocks, maybe about 10 or 12 stocks that they had in their portfolio that was managed. It was basically set up as a manager. So the manager would tell you which stocks they were going to pick, but they owned the individual stocks. So when we had to do tax loss harvesting, we could. So basically, if I was holding ExxonMobil as part of a strategy, I would move, if we needed to do some tax loss harvesting, what we would do is they would then move into a oil and gas ETF to basically for about 31 days to avoid the wash sale rule. And then we would move them back into their position. So we basically take the loss for tax purposes and then put them back in a position to basically maintain, but we would keep them kind of similarly situated. So we're maintaining the integrity of the portfolio. But I was doing that for about 2 years before the market crashed.
That's crazy. All these loopholes. When you have money, you're able to do so many different kind of investing and making sure that your money is working for you. And that's why people stay wealthy. Thank you for exposing us to that world. I will be a part of it one day and I'll understand all that stuff you just said. But in the meantime, while we trying to build our wealth, Courtney, how can people reach out to you and what's going on with you? What's up next for you?
So you can reach me. I'm pretty much on Instagram. Like that's like my playground. So Ivy Investor on Instagram. So that's THEIVY Investor on Instagram, on Facebook also, and on Twitter, but I don't really tweet that much. But I also have coming up a cannabis class. I'm doing cannabis live class. I've been teaching cannabis for about 2 years. My audience was like, hey, we want to invest in cannabis. And I was like, hey, that's really interesting. I don't know anything about it. I'll get back to you. But I ended up becoming an expert. So I'm an expert in cannabis. I've been fortunately speaking all over the nation about cannabis investing, which is a great opportunity, but I'm going to do a live class because people have been asking me about it. I have a class that's on my website now, but I call it, it's like a little bit on the stale size. I'm actually going to take it down because cannabis is such a fast moving industry. Is that something that I talked about in February? The game may have changed. I mean, in February when I did kind of maybe it's April. I think April's the last class that I did, but even still is that things were different. Like Illinois had not legalized recreational marijuana yet. That's like a huge game changer because a lot of the United States cannabis companies are actually really have a very large presence in Illinois. Looking at a recreational market, what is that going to do for them? So it's a lot of different moving parts. And then also we really just legalized hemp, which is considered, it's part of the cannabis. It's a cousin of marijuana that we know with the high THC. But it was just legalized in December. So we really haven't even walked through that whole possibility of what hemp does. Like hemp makes rope, it makes paper. I mean, I feel like, you kind of talk about like hemp as it's like the catch-all, but it really does.
Right. Like when I think about hemp, I think about rope. Like that was the first thing, like rope and all these hemp clothes and hemp socks and stuff like that. We got hemp everything out here because,
I know.
California.
Yeah, I see y'all.
Well, I'm looking forward to that class because I know nothing about cannabis. And so I need to be enlightened. So the class is going to drop.
It is going to drop on Thursday, October 24th.
Awesome. So be looking out for Courtney's class on cannabis. Make sure you connect with the Ivy Investor on all your social media platforms. I think that's cute. So you're an AKA. And you have the Ivy in your symbol, and you're going to be talking about cannabis that looks like Ivy. So that's pretty. I love all those connections. All right, Courtney. So it has been super awesome chatting with you. I've learned so much. I appreciate you. I've done some incredible things for your personal finance, for your business, for your mom. And I know that you're out here helping so many people. And for that, I am totally grateful for you being in this space because we need you, girl. So, all right. So, I'm just going to close it out there. Listen, you guys, if one of my daughters turned out half as committed as Courtney, I'd be set for life. So, you guys, it is never too late to get your financial house in order. So there's a popular Chinese proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. I always get questions from people who are a little older than me asking, is this possible for me? So let this be a testament that it can be done. So if you're older, make sure you take full advantages of the catch-up provisions allowed in your retirement plans. I implore every single one of you to reach out to your retirement plan administrator and ask, what other benefits are there available? Is there anything missing? Are there any hidden gems in this plan? By doing a little digging, Courtney was able to find some perks that served her mother by reducing fees, thus helping her money grow faster. Bottom line, you guys, get yourself a Courtney. All jokes aside, the last point I want to make is that hitting your financial goals, whether it be to retire in 11 years or pay off amount of debt, it doesn't have to be super hard. All it takes is a little intentionality and a plan you can stick to. You've been listening to Nurses on Fire. If you want to learn more about me or my guests, check out our show notes page. If you found value, please support our show by supporting our sponsors and affiliate also listed in the show notes. If you like what you're hearing, we'd love for you to give us a 5-star rating and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Google, or whatever podcast app you're using to stream this show. You guys, tell all the nurses in your life to subscribe. And if you know a nurse with a compelling money story and would like me to feature them, shoot me an email at Naseema@financiallyintentional.com. All right, y'all. Much love and keep them fires blazing.
Thank you for listening to my mommy's podcast. Don't forget to subscribe. Bye-bye.